Hey everyone, on today's episode we are gonna have a good friend of mine, Tom the Decker. Actually, he's probably a good friend of most people in the European, maybe global legacy and vintage community. Just the other week, Tom traveled to the 4Seasons tournament in Bologna, Italy, which we believe is the first big Eternal event in the year ever since COVID hit. Naturally, there are some reservations about holding big tournaments right now, depending on where you live. Tom tells us about how they made it work in Italy, which kind of interesting precautions they took, and also which kind of influence this had on everything that you might be used to from your usual tournament proceedings and how that deviated from that. I found that part really interesting, and especially if you're also interested in vintage, Tom breaks down his run into the top 8 of the vintage event, the deck that he played, why he likes it right now, as well as his run in Legacy with his painter list. Spoiler, didn't go as well as the vintage event. So yeah, I hope you guys are just gonna have a good time and enjoying the show tonight. I really also want to give thanks. We are really being overwhelmed by the support we're getting on Patreon. We have new Patreons, Tommy Hinks, Kyle Walkers, Henry Kokuch, and so many more people who are supporting us. I personally have been working on a couple of new things that will be coming out in the near future on YouTube. And it's really like your work or your support, I want to say, that has made not only this podcast, but a lot of other content that we create possible. There's a lot more to come in the future that I can't tell you about yet, but I really want to emphasize how big of a difference this really makes for our production here. So thank you so much for that, and enjoy the show. Hello everyone, welcome to the 84th episode of Everyday Eternal. With us tonight, as always, is my co-host Callum from the UK, and as our special guest tonight, my good friend, or rather our good friend from Belgium, Tom the Decker. Tom, how are you doing, man?
Hey, man. I'm doing good. Very happy to be here. Actually, quite honored to be on this institution of legacy podcast.
Oh, you must have mistaken us for some other kind of podcast. We're not an institution. We are we are the chaos.
What are you talking about?
We're really happy to have you on. Like, Tom, I've known you for quite a while, primarily as a vintage specialist, but you've also always played around in Legacy, right? And had your successes here and there. And as of recently, you attended one of the very first big tournaments ever since COVID hit the world. So you're gonna tell us a little bit about that in a moment. And for now, Callum, how are you doing? What have you been up to lately?
I'm very good, thanks. Very good. Not been hugely magicking recently due to work's been picking up busyness, and so I've been getting home and feeling pretty tired and just run down when I get home. So I wanted something a bit more brain dead. So I've been playing Arena actually, but not too much. So I've not been able to keep up the last couple of weeks, sadly. But I'll with the new set, I think I'm gonna try a lot of things out.
You've been cheating on Magic Online?
Cheating?
Oh yeah, I guess you could understand that in a different way, but yeah. By the way, guys, we were just delayed for 15 minutes as Callum was trying to figure out how to fix his audio problems, and I actually obtained permission to mention this because I find it amazing.
Yes.
So the issue was he actually had just turned down the speakers all the way, so he couldn't hear us.
Well, hold on, that's not fair.
Okay, that's not
fair. My microphone, I couldn't work out why I wasn't coming through to you, so I reinstalled some things and it worked because of that. But then after reinstalling some drivers, I restarted my computer, and because of the speakers I have plugged in, I turn the volume down every time I restart the computer because they might blow. And then I just forgot to turn the volume back up. So when I came back on, I was like, oh my God, you guys can hear me. Excellent. But now I can't hear you. What the fuck? So I couldn't work out 2 or 3 times. I tried to reinstall something, and turns out it was just the volume control. So people with audio problems, just turn it off and on again. It usually works.
And I mean, you work for an audio professional company, so,
yes,
so you
very
know your shit, right? Turn it off and on again. That's how it works.
You would be absolutely stunned by how much of the time this works. Like, people send in £5,000 equipment. Like, yeah, this isn't working. We can't work it out. And there's like sometimes just a fuse, but often it's like you turn it on and it's working, and they just needed to restart it. It's amazing how much it works.
You're like, okay, we figured it out. Here's our £500 fee.
We have a £50,000 mixing desk in the office, and like £25,000 speakers, and like this insane setup. And then it's all running through this little dock in the back, which you have to unplug and plug in again twice before it all works. It's amazing. So yeah, there's bugs in the works everywhere. Talking of bugs, this has nothing to do with bugs, but what have you been up to?
I just actually finished a 1-hour bike ride. I went out again. I'm watching a lot of the Tour de France, and that's just like something I'm really looking forward to every year. And as it finished today, it inspired me to go out again. I've been doing a lot of riding, and yeah, just finished a 1 hour ride.
Nice.
And magic-wise speaking, been playing a lot of elves. I might have mentioned that on a previous podcast.
Have you played the deck
already,
much before? Is it like a new love or something?
I think primarily I've been more known for like the tree folk and goblins kind of variety, but I've dabbled into this new druid. I guess we could call it an elf stack. That's the primary creature type, and it has been working out really well for me. They printed this new card, Allosaurus Shepherd, which basically turns all your elves into dinosaurs. And also happens to make all of them like uncounterable. And it's just like, it's the ultimate Timmy card that somebody would ever print. Like, all your stuff is uncounterable, itself is uncounterable, it makes all your guys big, and it makes them dinosaurs. That's really, like, if Timmy designed a card, and for those who don't know, Timmy is like the stereotype of a player that Wizards created that likes like big, amazing monsters, and he hates when his creatures get countered and stuff. And yeah, that's just me.
It's true.
Right now.
I mean, I hate these kind of cards. Elves sounds interesting though. Is it a combo deck or a mid-range deck?
Nude. Don't get me started.
Moving swiftly onwards.
I think it plays 3 Abrupt Decay, so it might be a control deck actually, if you ask a couple of people. So that's how it works.
Classic control finisher Progenitus as well.
Oh, that card has been better for me than for a lot of, like, in the past years we didn't really play that card, but now that Snow is around, and Snow is like all these weak removal spells, or quote-unquote mass removal spells that don't really hit Progenitors, like, come at me. But honestly, I think I'm asking for it to be punished.
The huge difference there is people playing Dead of Winter rather than Toxic Deluge, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And Toxic Deluge was always, there was this one scary moment where you had to survive for a turn, because after you hit them for 10, they usually couldn't pay 10 anymore. But I feel like I'm almost asking for trouble by talking about elves so much, both here and on Twitter and on stream and everywhere, because the deck can be hated out harder than it ever could now that Plague Engineers, I think, that people can even play in the main deck. And with it making like quite a splash on Magic Online again recently, I'm scared that the hate is eventually gonna come back, but maybe people are just gonna ignore it and focus more on the Rock Evermere. So I really don't know, but I'm gonna enjoy the way it works for the time being, and whatever the future brings, we will see. Maybe I'm gonna go back to my tree folk roots. Who knows?
Nice. What about you, Tom? Well, we will actually get into the segue of, I was about to say, what have you done recently? But there's a big reason why we invited you on to talk about a recent event. Plus, you're just great. So other than the 4Seasons event, you been up to anything recently? How is Belgium?
Belgium as a whole hasn't been doing too well in terms of the whole corona crisis thing, of course. Our numbers haven't been fantastic. Things seem to be going great by start of July, I'd say. But then all of a sudden the curve wouldn't continue going down. Instead, it went back up. So by the end of July, we were in wave 2, and me and my family have been pretty much locked up at home ever since. To get my Magic fix, I've mainly been playing over Discord with through webcam, because I'm not really much of an online player myself. I've never really enjoyed the software, but
it's not for everyone,
with my cell phone suspended, these webcam games have been quite fun. That has been my preparation for now.
Nice. We actually got a listener question specifically for you from Stoneheart from the Discord. He asked, what kind of games is Tom looking to play when he plays Vintage and Legacy? People have said that playing those formats is most like playing chess. Is that true? What do you think of that?
So, I guess the kinds of games I enjoy most differ depending on the format. So in Legacy, I mostly enjoy fair decks, actually. So my big love for years has been Esperblade, or I sometimes call it Blue Junt.
It's true, yeah.
That's exactly the kind of game I enjoy. So starting off on Thoughtseize or with some quick counter magic, establishing a threat, and then trying to figure out how to maneuver the game from there. So in Legacy, I've mostly been drawn to those kind of decks. Until, of course, recently Oko and Uro made it quite hard to be playing stuff like Asperblade or Grixis Control. And then in Vintage, I'm mostly looking to do broken things. That's I've always played the blue decks. I've dabbled into workshops, especially when Mystic Forge was legal and Karn was legal as a 4-off. Basically, when you could play it as a combo deck, but mostly I'm looking to play blue with some possibility to go broken.
I like that. When you have such a, I guess the broken decks, their flaws are often being like a decent control deck as well. So you do have this mismatch of like PO. I've seen people say it's a combo deck and you should be playing it faster as a combo deck. I've seen people say it's a control deck. It just plays both roles pretty well, I think. So
I think it's actually a mid-range deck.
wow. Okay, here we go. What do you think of PO, Tom?
Well, so the past 2 years, I've kind of been making a name for myself on the MKM series, and that was when PO was basically the best deck in the format. So it's kind of on the back of that card that I've been able to establish myself a bit in that circuit. With relation to that, I've played PO in the first event I won with it in MKM Prague. There was a Dark Ritual in my deck to show a bit how combo I wanted to play it, and then 2 years later I was playing it with green, with Mystic Remoras, and with Oath in the sideboard. So all the way the other as a control deck. So
Very
yeah,
nice.
I kind of love PO in the sense that you can build it any way you want to. I think these days it's this kind of an established list that's really good at playing both roles, the full color list. So yeah, I think the people have optimized it, but back when there was some more room to play around with, I really liked choosing both sides of the equation.
I love seeing the Oath PO deck when it kind of first popped up because, as you say, Oath can go with anything, which is like, well, you just need to play Moxen, which everyone is anyway. So yeah, you're right. There's so much room to experiment around with it, and then yeah, you could like just jam an Oath out, and if they then, I don't know, like if you're in a mirror, for example, if they play their own Orchard, you could Oath, PO it back or something cool. You could do a lot of things. Like if they wouldn't play out a creature, it's still something that sits there, stops them playing creatures. Then you can like end of turn, PO it or whatever. Yeah, very nice.
Yeah, it's just a nice strategy to pivot into when you're up against workshops, primarily. I think.
Yeah. I guess that's the thing, because workshops can just like completely destroy fair decks with the fast sphere starts and stuff if they don't have the force will on time. Whereas PO, you don't always have the problem. You do have forces as well to stop the spheres, but then you can just like turn one them as well. The deck turn one's more than I expected it to.
Absolutely, it's a scary deck.
Terrifying. Talking of scary decks, which is again nothing to do with the next section. I just like saying that. We're going to talk about one of our main topics, which is tournaments results and paper legacy, which is something the whole format has been devoid of for so long. We've really shifted to all our results are from online. It was kind of trending that way for a while in the past before COVID anyway, but we have just been devoid of all paper results because there's been no tournaments happening. But this past weekend in Italy, 4Seasons tournaments ran the first paper legacy event in a while. You can correct me on this. I believe they had 150 something players, 155. It's written right here in the show notes. Good, Callum. 155 players for the legacy main event, and you went there. Tell us about your experiences, how you got there, and what precautions were taken. How did it go?
I'd been eyeing the events in Italy for a while. I'd been to Bologna, I think 2 years ago, also to the summer event, and I had a really good time there. So I had been watching their Facebook group like a hawk, in anticipation of maybe an announcement coming. So
like a true addict.
Yeah, because I've been really aching to play another event. Magic's been my main hobby for a few years now, and with the whole quarantine thing, it has been a part of my life I've been really missing. So as the date came closer, I decided to just book my flights, hoping our country didn't go into lockdown before then. And lo and behold, last weekend I set foot in Bologna to play some Magic.
What was it like, the travel? So could you easily get into the country, or did they test you at the airport? I know in Germany, for example, you're supposed to be tested at the airport and get your results in like 1 or 2 days. What was it like arriving in Italy?
It was pretty standard. The only thing that was different is that they took your temperature before you could enter the gates at the airport here in Belgium. And then there's some formalities you need to take care of. So when we leave the country and when we come back, we need to basically communicate our whereabouts to our government so they could know where we've been, and they could contact trace us in case there's like a breakout of the virus there, an outbreak. But other than that, I mean, actually, I think everything was pretty business as usual, which is kind of weird because, jamming all these people together in a cheap flight doesn't sound like the best idea, and it probably isn't, but I guess the economy needs to needs to keep going, and people need to keep flying, or these companies don't manage. So there we are, packed onto a flight. Of course, we all had to wear masks.
Oh, there were no additional precautions in Italy itself?
In the cities, there's a requirement to wear a mask at all times when you cannot keep a safe distance from people. So we actually stayed in Florence on Friday and on Sunday because I have a friend there, and we could stay at his
envy
place.
you. And Florence is amazing.
Florence is amazing, absolutely. So when we were in the city center, which was still a bit crowded, we did have to wear a mask almost at all times. But people are like pretty casual about it. It's only when you go inside larger buildings and in the convention center where we played Magic. Or I guess the community center is a better description. There's an obligation to wear a mask, which of course makes
even
sense.
During the games. So it's not like between rounds, but even during the games, everybody was wearing a mask. That's what I saw in the pictures, right?
Yeah, when you're inside the building, you wear a mask. That's the main rule, and that was pretty well enforced. And nobody also made a fuss about it. Everybody knew that was the so-called costs to pay when to play the event.
I was going to ask, since you said it was very well enforced, did they actually have to actively enforce it, or did everybody basically comply and you didn't notice anyone like fucking things? Like, why would you even go there if you were not going to wear a mask, right? That would be like really weird.
Yeah, the thing. Nobody like really made a fuss about it. The only thing that you saw people sometimes doing is, I think it's almost like a reflex. They put their nose over the mask to get some fresh air, and then they don't put it back, and then every once in a while, a judge needed to point at someone and say, "Hey, put the mask on."
Oh, they did.
They did, in fact, do it.
Oh, that's actually really cool that they did that.
Yeah, I actually really liked it. I mean, in a sense, we're all taking a risk crowding together in a place like that. So everybody needs to do their part. I think it's only logical.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so in between matches, you were not allowed to linger, and to railbird, you needed to go outside. So that was also to avoid crowds gathering. There was a catering area set outside, which I'm not sure if it was even specifically for the pandemic, right? It might have been there all the time, but that way you didn't need to stay inside crowded with other people, and you could just have your lunch at a designated table on your own or with your bubble, I guess.
So that actually sounds like, that surprised me somewhat. I thought it would be like not as well enforced. I don't know why. I just feel like, but yeah, that sounded really like things worked out the way they were supposed to be. I guess, like you mentioned, you're still taking a risk, like meeting with so many people inside a confined room. But I hope everything worked out. Like we can't really tell for now, right? How long has it been? Like a week?
Yeah, it's been a week now. Well, I mean, the tournament was last weekend. This is Thursday. Yeah, but another thing they did when we registered for the event, they actually did take our temperature. They had one of these fancy laser tag style guns to do that. And they did. Everybody also needed to fill in another piece of paperwork with their name and their telephone number. So I guess that's also a requirement, so they could do contact tracing in case of an outbreak. I'm not quite sure what they'll do about it, but for example, I could imagine. Say somebody is picked out as being COVID positive, they could in theory see what this person's matchups were and contact these people specifically. They have the data, they have the technology.
I would guess you'd probably need to contact everyone, right? Because you probably mixed at some point, and better safe than sorry.
I would assume they contact everyone for sure. Yeah. It's pretty cool that they took temperatures as well. That's impressive. That is not messing around, which is really good to hear. Which bodes well for future tournaments as well, if everything continues to trend at the same rate.
Yeah, unless I can imagine some countries where people would be like, no, that's an invasion of my privacy. You're not supposed to know what my temperature is. It's like, okay, dude.
It's my freedom.
Yeah, that's you have to pay if you want to know my temperature. It's like, okay, and you got to pay if you want to play in my tournament. It's like, goodbye.
I heard that you couldn't cut the other people's decks and shuffling and stuff. I guess no handshakes as well, to be expected.
Oh yeah, that's super interesting. Franco Boli actually had a question about that, right? What common practices and mannerisms have changed? Like I would guess no handshakes at all, and I didn't know about the no touching your opponent's deck, but I mean, on one hand it makes total sense, right? On the other hand, it's it's supposed to be a thing in Magic, but I guess did people just rely on I don't know.
No, people rely on trust. That's what people rely on.
Trust. Such a simple word.
Yeah, so there were a few rules in place for the tournament, the biggest one, you being not allowed to touch each other's deck, and also no handshakes, and you also required to bring your own playmat to play on. But so the whole handshake thing, it's of course a small one in the grand scheme of things. It does make things kind of awkward in the end, especially if you're used to always giving a handshake. But you can always do the weird wave from a distance, or even the elbow bump I've seen being used. So there's a way around it if you really feel the need to to close out the game with something like that. And then for the whole touching the deck thing, I actually really like it. I mean, maybe it's also because I played Vintage on Saturday, and it's always a pleasure if people don't really touch your deck in that format. But no, you just clearly shuffle your deck in front of your opponent, and then basically after a fetch or any normal shuffle, I tend to cut my deck in 3 piles, and then my opponent gets to decide which pile goes on top.
Oh, that's actually really cool.
Preventing essentially any shenanigans for the old fetch land tutor, for example, right? And that's a habit I picked up from playing these games on Discord.
That's nice.
Oh yeah, because on Discord you also of course you can't shuffle your opponent's deck on Discord, and yeah, wow, this is completely new technology. I like this.
Broken the shuffling
so we just
format.
shuffle the deck, present 3 piles. Opponent gets to decide which pile goes on top, and then you just carry on. And actually, it saves a bunch of time, because just stacking the 3 piles is way quicker than handing over your deck to your opponent, who then needs to like rifle shuffle it a bunch more times. And in terms of risk for cheating, I think it's actually absolutely minimal, because the gesture of cutting the deck and then having your opponent pick a pile is just so clear and clearly in front of you.
Yeah. Did most people do that, or is that something that basically only you and a couple others did?
Well, I did it with all of my opponents, but this may be because I immediately offered it myself. I didn't really pay a lot of attention to other matches. I think I saw a few people who just, clearly shuffled and then asked their opponent if they were, satisfied with the shuffling, and then and kept it at that.
Maybe that's actually maybe gonna become a thing. So I'm definitely gonna spread the word about that. That sounds really cool.
Yeah, same. I agree. It seems almost like worth doing, even if everything was back to normal. Like, yeah, shuffling and cutting other people's decks, but yeah, you're right. It's so minimal, the chance of cheating with this, like, because maybe it's even less than the chance that your opponent gets your deck and stacks it or something. I don't know. Yeah,
that like 12 years ago, I want to say, that was actually the big change, like who gets the last cut, because previously you get to have the last cut. So if your opponent shuffled your deck, you were supposed to still have the last cut, which rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, because of course if there's something with your sleeves, then if you cut to the exact card that you want, I don't know, say it's Belgian, you put Belgian on top because something is about the Belgian sleeves, then that would be prevented. But at the same time, of course, back then, I think it was about 12 years ago, people argued that they don't feel comfortable if their opponent actually gets the last cut, because that's where something like when you know what they call a fetch land lock, when you fetch and then they put another fetch land on top, so you fetch, they put another fetch land on top, and that was enabled by that. Yeah. So there never really was a perfect solution, but I really like what Tom just proposed.
Yeah, same.
Awesome. So, in speaking of actual Magic, because that's why you went to Italy, right? There's good food and everything, and warm weather, awesome climate, awesome cities. But you went to Italy to play Magic, particularly Vintage and Legacy. And I think Vintage was the very first tournament you played on that weekend. So, what did you play in Vintage? Why did you play it? And how did the tournament go?
Yeah, so I did play Vintage on Saturday, and I decided to bring 4-color Underworld Breach. In this case, I slightly modified it to include a few Dreadhorde Arcanists and a few removal spells you'd normally find in a Xerox deck. So the idea here was to be, well, a bit like we discussed earlier with the PO deck, to be a combo deck in Breach, but slightly more controlling and slightly more grindy. So 4-color Underworld Breach, I think, is clearly a very strong deck. It's been performing well for months now, and I was a bit off PO. I also considered it. The other deck I really considered was Doomsday, because I think it's very, very strong. But Doomsday is quite linear, and I would have preferred to have a bit more variety in my games. So that's why I ended up the Underworld Breach deck.
So did Doomsday also get a huge boost from Thassa's Oracle?
Yeah, the Vintage deck got significantly stronger. I think it's probably the best blue deck at the moment. The thing with Doomsday is the combo is so compact that you always get to run the full suite of blue stew, plus a full suite of counter spells and your combo. There's really no concessions because you have plenty of space to work with.
Yeah, I've seen the deck's been absolutely tearing up online. It's been like top 8ing. It's been like 2 or 3 copies in every top 8 of the challenges for what I've seen. Maybe there's a couple where it wasn't quite that many, but especially there's like one user called DiscoverN who's just top 8ing every single challenge, and the deck is just absurdly crushing on Magic Online. So from an outside-ish perspective, from what I see, it looks to be like the best deck in the format. It seems insane.
Yeah, so I positioned my my Underground Breach deck to be slightly more controlling in an attempt to be able to fight on that axle. I didn't face Doomsday in the event. I don't think there were any players, if I'm being honest, but I didn't scout all of the decks because, well, we weren't allowed to linger after our matches, and some of my matches were over pretty quickly.
I can imagine. So how many people actually showed up for the Vintage event?
Yeah, we were 19 people in the Vintage event, which is, I think, pretty good given circumstances. Now, this is an event that allowed proxies, so not all of these were, I would say, Vintage regulars, but all the more fun to have some newer players in our way, I guess.
Oh, that's how you did so well in that event. No.
I always jokingly say that Vintage is kind of soft, but I think there's like some truth to it, in all honesty. Many of the players you encounter in a Vintage event are not there really to try and do well. They're just there because they like playing with the cards, they like playing with their friends. It's a lot more casual in atmosphere, so many of the players also don't really have the most up-to-date technology in the deck. Yeah, so it pays to be ahead of the curve, I would say.
That's something I've always quite enjoyed about Vintage in a way. Like, it's so simple in its nature, but you play it because you enjoy playing with these old cards. It's kind of what Old School is trying to do as well, or does pretty well. So yeah, that's why Vintage Online I don't really get the appeal for, but in London we used to run some events with proxies allowed and stuff. And it even got me to the point where I was buying Vintage cards that weren't power because it was so fun to play in paper because you didn't have this cut-through edge of playing the best deck, but the format can do some really, really cool things. So I do like that people like kind of play what they enjoy and stuff. I think it feels like a big part of the format. But of course,
think a lot of development and things going on in Vintage really start picking up once it became such a big thing on Magic Online, because that gave it a real boost. Because now basically we have 1 or 2 big events per week for Vintage, and they have the same payout as all the other events. And since Vintage doesn't really draw the biggest crowds, I would even argue that Vintage might have the best overall expected value in all of the Magic Online formats right now. I mean, it has more variance, I guess, but not so much more. Like, I thought it was, before I somewhat got into Vintage, right, I thought it was like all turn 1 kills all the time, everybody plays the perfect song and stuff. It's like, no, that's actually not what's happening there. Like, people can play those decks, but
if you need proof of that not being real, look to Justin Gennari, who is I Am Actually Level 1, and Matt Murray, who is Chubby Rain. There are other fantastic Vintage players out there similar in this vein, but those two just win so much, and they're brewers as well at heart. They're constantly like making new decks in the format, just winning with new decks as well. But they're such deep knowledge of the format, like just rewards them time and time again. Justin Gennari won the Vintage Showcase a week or 2 weeks ago maybe, so he qualified for the Mox and the Pro Tour through Vintage, and he's just a Vintage player basically by his admission.
And that's basically a minimum like $5,000 payout for the Mox, so he made like big bank playing Vintage and Magic Online. So
he beat Reed Duke in the finals.
Oh wow. Tom, maybe one day we can get you on so we can do some Vintage together. Maybe I'm gonna get you on my stream if you like.
Yeah, I'd love that. I just don't like playing Magic Online myself, but I'd love to be on and railbird a few of your matches, maybe give you some advice. Maybe you can teach me a few new tricks as well. Who knows?
Let's see. You already helped me out. You helped me out winning was it the only one of my MKM Vintage finals by basically giving me the tips like I'm supposed to bring in Grafdigger's Cage against Paradoxical Outcome, which I actually wouldn't have done, but you told me that I'm supposed to do that, and that actually worked out for me. And I guess what we're not mentioning there is that I actually faced you in the finals. So I still owe, I've told you this before, I still owe you dinner because we couldn't even find McDonald's or anything on that evening. And we actually had to survive on food donations that we received at the hotel because everything was closed because we're in Germany.
Yeah, that was a
great
quite the
time.
event. I still regret nothing. At least you beat me fair and square that game, and I guess I can be salty about making the finals playing a friend who's also playing a bunch of my cards. That's really the best outcome, regardless of who wins.
Basically all of your cards.
All but one, actually. There was one card I needed to borrow from someone else.
Awesome. So how did your vintage event in Italy go? You did pretty well in it, right?
Yeah, I guess for a small event, I did fairly well. So it was 5 rounds of Swiss. I started out against Oath of Druids, also on their coverage, because the guys in Bologna had a stream on Twitch.
We're going to link to that in the show notes.
Yeah, against Oath of Druids, things went basically exactly as I scripted it. As game 1, I got off with a Dreadhorde Arcanist, and I just snowballed that in a fair way to victory. Just replaying mystical tutors and counter spells, and to get more counter spells, keeping off and drawing a few cards with preordains.
Totally fair.
Yeah, and so by the end of game 1, he didn't even know I was actually on breach, I think. I believe he'd seen Vampiric Tutor. So I was really hoping to get him in the second game. Unfortunately, he was the one who really got me in game 2. He had a classic all cards plus Mox into Oath opening.
You know what we call it in German? I've picked up, like, I'm not really an active vintage player, but I was trained in the dark arts of vintage at times by the German vintage community, and they told me if you have the land, like basically that the nut start is called Land Mox Ding Dong.
Yeah, that sounds quite about right. So Land Mox Ding Dong, and I actually had Wear in my hand, but no white mana because I am playing 4 colors. So my deck is base blue-red with light splashes to black and white, and I had an Underground Sea, not a Tundra or a Fetch, so I wasn't able to clean up the Oaths before it was too late. So he took the second one quite quickly, and then game 3 I got to show him that I was actually an Underworld Breach deck, and I think I killed him on turn 3 or 4 quite easily. Yeah, I think I had a very early recall and then just snowballed from there. A lot of games these days are decided on who gets to resolve their Ancestral Recall first.
Awesome. And what else did you face? Did you go undefeated in the Swiss? I think you did, right?
Yeah, but that just meant with 19 players I went 3-0, and then I just took 2 identical draws to end up in first spot anyway. Second round I won against Rock Planeswalkers, so featuring Renan 6 and Oko.
That's a thing?
Yeah, it's the Mystic Forge gives Mystic Sanctuary gives the deck quite a good late game, as they can start using Renan 6 plus Gush to get the land back over and over again, and then to rebuy Time Walk.
Oh, so you get to put it. That's kind of crazy. That's okay. Let's quickly break this down because this.
Well, you don't go actually infinite, but you can loop it quite a few times, and then with Young Pyromancer or Sprite Dragon or just snowballing Dreadhorde Arcanist, you can get ahead quite far, and then it just plays the whole slew of blue card draw spells and counter magic and a play set of Pyroblasts to defend itself. It's quite a strong deck, very mid-rangey.
What I've noticed in Vintage for a while is a lot of decks are playing 4 Pyroblasts in main deck now. I don't remember that being a thing like even a year ago. Has the format become just that much bluer, or is it blue decks just saying, all right, these are just all... I guess they always had missteps as dead cards versus Workshop, so they're thinking they can afford to have these dead cards and play Pyroblast instead of misstep. Is that how it goes?
I think it's mainly been a response to how easy it's gotten to snowball Ancestral Recall, actually. The need to counter Merchant Scroll early, to counter Mystical Tutor. Like many of the decks now rely on snowballing Ancestral Recall early, either through Breach or well, I guess in PO's case it's not specifically Recall, but they just try to change draw spells just as easily. And so these decks are really becoming a dominant force, and they're just starting to get a bit inbred. Workshop's also been taking a beating as of late.
That makes sense.
Force of Vigor was very painful.
Yeah, usually Workshop always takes a beating from Wizards of the Coast, right? That's the only way that deck ever becomes worse.
Yeah, there's also Hogak, which is really strong, and also Praise on Workshop. So I think it's a number of factors making Workshop less and less viable as a deck mean that the blue decks are starting to become more and more powerful, and then they start to respond to one another, and all of a sudden you end up playing 4 Pyroblast in your main deck. I only played 2, which may or may not have been wrong. I just figured maybe I wouldn't. Maybe more players in paper would stick to their old guns. But in fact, I only played blue decks throughout the tournament.
No, Dredge. Did people play it? Like last time I checked in with Vintage, Dredge was actually supposed to be the best deck in the tournament.
Well, there was one Dredge player, I believe, and he won the event.
It's always there.
So is that the answer? I don't know, but I wasn't playing too much Dredge Hate either. And he just went through it like a knife through butter.
Did you face him in the quarterfinals?
No. I was eliminated by a Paradoxical Outcome player in the quarterfinals. My draws just matched up really badly against his. Okay. My Lavinias versus his Caracas. Me having a Mindbreak Trap versus him going Mox Time Walk into Teferi the next turn. And stuff like that. So I was never really in it.
Man, you're getting me really excited for Vintage though.
I'm tempted to play Doomsday. The deck looks really fun. Like it's kind of similar to the Legacy deck where you're playing Mean Deck, which is where you have access to Force of Will. So you are a disruption heavy deck, and then you just cast Doomsday and win off not very much. But here you can win off just so little because you just when you have access to Ancestral Recall and Black Lotus, it's trivial to just make a pile where you recall into Force Blue Card Oracle or like Gush as well. So it's super easy to win off very little in Doomsday in this deck. So
yeah, in Vintage, they go Dark Ritual, Doomsday go a surprising amount of the time. Just because if they have 2 Thassa's Oracles in their pile, they essentially force you to interact with them 2 turns in a row, or you just lose on the spot, and that's just so strong.
They do also make piles with Flusterstorm as well. And
so how often does it actually come up that they create a Doomsday pile and draw into the pile, and then you try to kill them with Ancestral Recall?
I haven't seen it happen with Ancestral Recall, but Brain Freeze is a hell of a card against them. From the Underworld Breach.
I played against Doomsday a few times when Breach was legal in Legacy, and actually I was on the other side as well at my local game store a couple of times, and you have to have Veil for the Brain Freeze while you're fighting their Force of Wills. Oh, it was horrible.
Maybe you just gotta put an Emrakul into your pile,
and then you shuffle no cards back in, and I guess you shuffle. Oh no, you shuffle the cards you milled. Yeah,
you shuffle everything back in. It happens to be a random library in the end, but that might still be good enough.
Yeah, there we go. So what's your pile? It's Thassa's Oracle, the Mana to Caster, Emrakul the Aeon's Torn. Do you know the classic? Yeah.
Maybe you can put Sheldock card in there as an alternate win condition.
Yes. So you Sheldock, and then if they Brain Freeze you in response to Sheldock, then they're a fool and you got them. They waltz into your trap and you mill the Emrakul, shuffle it, and then you hit it off the Sheldock pile. Yeah, very good.
Exactly.
I can also see a scenario where you just die on the extra turn because you cast your Emrakul and then you untap and you die.
There's 4 Dark Rituals, and in Legacy you have Lotus Petals, and Vintage you have Moxen and Black Lotus. Yeah, you can cast it, maybe.
You cast it off the Sheldock Isle. That's the idea.
Well, yeah. But if they Wasteland in response.
No, if they Brain Freeze you, then you have no library left.
Yeah. Okay, fine. All right, we'll give up on this idea till another day.
So, Tom, tell us about Legacy. How deep did you go in Legacy? What did you play? You told me about the deck you were gonna play in Legacy quite a while in advance. You were pretty fond of how that had been doing. Can you give us a little bit of an intro to that?
I've been playing a red-blue painted deck on these Discord servers for quite a few months now, and as I was listening to various podcasts and reading articles, everybody was just talking about how Rug Delver was the best deck, and Snowco was so good, and I just figured, well, why not be the guy playing 6 Pyroblast in the main deck if that's going to be the metagame we're facing. So that was my choice. Painter, including 11 different welder effects with some the Great Creator action as well to get more redundancy in the combo and maybe let some people. I played, I think, 3 events beforehand, winning 1, and these are all 3 or 4 round events, so these don't mean much. But the deck had been going pretty well, so I felt quite confident going into the event. And round 1, when I sat down, I immediately got crushed by Infect. So that confidence was really, really destroyed from the get-go. Infect is, I think, quite a hard matchup because they just race you out straight up. I lost on their turn 3 in the first game, and I think again on turn 3 in the second game. The second game, I only needed a Red Blaster interact, but I couldn't find one for the life of me. I'd kept hands just trying to dump as many artifacts into the battlefield to try and raise them, but it just didn't work out. So I started out 0-2, confidence crushed, and onto the second round.
Infect is the kind of deck that can just beat anyone and anything pretty fast and easily. Like you said, you were looking for a Red Blast for, I guess, Blighted Agent, but sometimes they'll just have the draw with an Ink Moth, and I can really see Painter lining up pretty poorly sometimes. Like your cards really have to fall in order, and they have more disruption. So I can see the matchup being pretty tough.
So then the second round, I faced Death and Taxes, which I didn't really expected to see a lot, because I had rumored that the deck was all that well in the current meta game and had troubles dealing with. Well, I don't know actually why the deck would be so bad.
Yeah.
People were complaining about it being unplayable, so I just figured people would believe that.
I don't think it's unplayable at all. It's decent. I think it's a lot better than people let off. So yeah, and especially in paper, it's one of those decks that people will just really like as well, for good reason. It's a cool deck for playing 12 planes. But yeah, I would expect to see it in paper, honestly. Even now, even with like it's so over the top saying it's unplayable when the deck has been a strong deck for years. And yes, it struggles with Oko, but you still have like Wasteland, Port, Thalia.
Does show up on Magic Online quite a bit as of late again, I want to say. I'm not sure how good it's really going to be, but like you mentioned, people are probably like overblowing how bad it became through the recent printings. Yeah. So
if you're being strict about it, I think it's like tier 2, slightly lower ends of tier 2, but that's a perfectly playable legacy deck. So yeah. Anyway, Tom, how did the match go?
Well, the deck was perfectly capable of defeating me, I'll tell you that. Game 1 was funny in the sense that we both locked each other out. He had put Revoker on my Grindstone, and then in combination with Sanctum Prelate at 1, I wasn't actually able to break out of the lock, even though at a certain point I had 5 Welders in play, Khan in play. Pretty much locked him out on the Ensnaring Bridge, but I would deck first, because I had been using Emry a bunch.
Isn't there a scenario where you counter one of his artifacts and then you welder out his Revoker?
Yeah, he had no artifacts in his graveyard, and I couldn't counter any because the only card that will let me do that is Red Elemental Blast, which costs 1.
Oh, so you said you're playing blue, but you didn't. I guess you don't have enough to support Force, or you maybe sided them out, I guess.
There's no Force of Will in the deck, no. The only blue cards are Emry in the main deck.
Okay, I see.
So I eventually ended up conceding.
I'm just trying to somehow piece something together, but you're the expert in that deck.
Well, I wouldn't say I'm the expert, but I went through the whole deck as I was fetching, and then I went through my whole sideboard as I was activating Khan, and there really wasn't an option I could see, so I just ended up conceding, getting locked out. And then game 2...
That's actually kind of crazy. You had your entire 75, basically almost the entire 75 at your disposal, and they locked you out of those 2 cards. That was... Oh, man. That actually makes me want to look at the deck list and be like, is there no way? Can't I just like animate some of my artifacts in the deck? But yeah, I mean, they also play the game. It's not like they stop playing the game, right? As you draw your extra cards and everything.
Well, the craziest thing is, the week before the event, I had 1 card different in my deck. I had 1 Deck Faden in there instead of the 4th Emry. And then pretty much last minute, I decided, Emry's been really good. I'm just going to play the full 4. Had I had Deck Faden in my 75, I could have eventually stolen a Revoker and then welded it out for something of mine to get out of the lock.
Mm.
But that card was not in my 75. It wasn't in my main deck, so I couldn't ever make it. And then, game 2, I tried playing fast, but didn't get there, because game 1 took forever. So that means I'm 0-2 in the event. And then it's all pretty much downhill from there. I lost against, I think, Bug Delver in the 3rd round. Straight up got wasted out of the game.
Bug Delver, okay.
He just... The deck is normally not that weak to Wasteland, I would say. I mean, we play 4 basics and some fetches to go around it and a bunch of artifact mana. But these games, my hand just really didn't work out against what he had. And he could keep me off mana while posing a threat and countering my spells. I just got delved straight out. Not really much play to it.
Mm. I was just surprised to see Bug Diver, because that's a rare specimen these days.
So was I. I think you just really liked having Abrupt Decay instead of Lightning Bolt. We didn't really talk much about it. Because by then I was feeling quite, it's feeling quite down, I guess. And then, I lost against another, actually an interesting build of Delver also. He was playing Noble Hierarch in what seemed like a Rock Delver list. Eschewing, I guess, Tarmogoyfs. He did have Arcanist.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I guess trying to play Oko faster and get ahead on mana if you expect mirrors and stuff.
Yeah, I think that was the goal. He also had 2 True Names in his deck. So I think he was really into the idea of racing out an Oko or a True Name and going from that. The one interesting that did came up was he did try to Oko my Painter, which has a really interesting effect when it comes to stopping the combo,
God.
which it doesn't.
This is a lovely like layers thing, isn't it? I
Yeah,
heard it's like similar for if you Oko Magus of the Moon, everything's still a mountain. Is that right?
Yeah, it's exactly the same kind of interaction. So the rule that says that things get a different color, so color changing effects, that sits in a higher layer than the ability adding and removing that Oko does. And so the effect first gets applied, and then the ability gets removed in a layer more down. So even though my Painter 7 didn't have the ability, everything was still blue, and Grindstone still milled them out.
Nice.
You know what I want to see? I want to see the next level game that's happening there. So your opponent, they target your Painter, and then you don't know whether they know or not, or whether they think that you just don't know, so you wouldn't go for it. You know what I mean? Oh, that's amazing. That's because if it's like their last and only out, they might just like Oko the Painter and hope that you don't activate your Grindstone. And at that time, like then later on, if you use a Pyroblast on something, they could either like be like, okay, this resolves because you can Pyroblast anything, right? And this is interesting. This is interesting. So if they actually don't know and you Pyroblast something important, then they would be like, oh, this player is so bad, he doesn't know. So they let it resolve. When in fact that's actually going to destroy it, even though they could have countered or done something about it. Oh man, oh that's super interesting. So you ended up losing to that, right?
Yeah, so I won game 1 on the back of that. Well, not only on the back of that, I had a dominating board presence by the time I had activated Grindstone. And then game 2, he got me with Wasteland and Counter Magic once again. So I keep a hand that in theory could combo in turn 2, but he poses a Dreadhorde. I go for it because otherwise the game snowballs out of control, and he has the Force of Will, and I just can't get back behind the Dreadhorde. And then game 3 he plays Collector Roof, and that was the game. Very fair and square. Collector Roof is a hell of a card to beat with my deck, full of value artifacts.
Oh, I can imagine. So what did he play next round then?
Yeah, that's the 04, and then I continued playing, and finally faced the so-called Scourge of the Format, according to many, which is Bug Snowco. And here again, I managed to combo out.
That's the deck you prepared for, right? That's the one you wanted to beat.
Yeah, and I did beat it quite swiftly. One game where I just had a great hand, but then games 2 and 3, the deck stumbled. I believe there was a mulligan involved as well. But if I'm being honest, by that time, my heart wasn't really into that much. So I'm pretty sure I started playing quite poorly as well. So I comboed out once and then just got grinded to dust by him, which is normally my job, being the Grindstone pilot. So then at 05, I decided I had enough, and I settled for beers outside rather than games inside. That's a good bracket to be in.
Yeah, I like the beer bracket much more.
I'm actually curious. I'm curious whether something like side events, or did they also scrap all the side events because of COVID?
There were other events going on. I believe on Sunday there was also an old school tournament going on. I'm not quite sure if there were on-demand side events because I didn't really ask for them myself. But the hall seemed, I'd say, pretty packed, even though there was plenty of space between chairs. But I don't think they had like enough space to really go into on-demand side events.
I see. So for the total event, they had 155 players. We already mentioned that. Which is quite a lot, right? I guess people were really desperate to play Magic again. And we have the top 8, actually the top 16 deck lists here. We're going to post them in the show notes, a link to their Facebook site where all of them are. And almost, as you would imagine, there's several land stacks, depending on how you want to classify them.
As you would imagine, you mean? I was quite surprised by this. I mean, pleasantly surprised.
Really? Like, Italy always has so much lands players.
It's true, but the deck is not fantastically positioned, I feel. But I think
good. That's just the thing about paper Magic.
Yeah, it's true.
That's actually something I've been wondering for quite a while. Like, if we ever go back to somewhat regular paper events, like on a bigger scale, did people really like try to keep up with the online metagame or anything like that, or rather just play what they knew and maybe make some minor adjustments? Because especially like lands is like such an expensive deck, and maybe you don't own that many other decks, and you just like really want to play it again. And like I mentioned previously, I remember going to MKM Rome like 2 years ago, and Red Green Lands was actually the most played deck in the entire metagame that day. Yeah,
that's a fair point. And actually, I have a feeling I do know a little bit about these two players. I know that they're friends. They also
share the same first name.
No, I know you like the second name, but they have the same first name. Do they? I didn't see.
Yeah.
Oh, of course.
Giacomo.
But I know that they are active in the Lands Discord because they posted there, and one of the lists has a really, really clever inclusion, which is super up to date, super new tech. So when we get into the lists, I'll mention that. So yeah, I reckon they're just very, very good players as well. So do you want to read through the top 8?
Yeah, so the top 8, first place we got Giacomo Battaglia or something, which means battle, by the way. That's
nice.
So cool.
Love it.
Playing Red Green Lands. Second place, Giacomo Rigini playing Hogak. Third place, Blue White Red Mentor Midrange that plays Bobbles but no Terminus. That's actually like some super interesting.
This is a really interesting one as well.
Fourth place, Red Green Lands. Fifth place, Turbo Depth. Sixth place basically Banned Miracles Splashing Red, but no Uro actually, but Frantic Inventory, which is the accumulated knowledge clone. Seventh place, Slow Depth, so they play Dark Confident and that kind of stuff, so there's like a turn slower. Eighth place, Hogak.
Nice.
So if you want to count like depth as some lands variety, like half the top 8 is some kind of heavily lands-based decks.
So actually, I made a mistake before. Both lands players have exactly the same deck, from what I can see. There might be like one little difference that I'm missing, but I think they are actually the same. So this, like, adds to the point of them being friends. And what is amazing to me is the Grasping Dunes. So if anyone doesn't know, Grasping Dunes is a land that taps for colorless, and it has an ability where you, for one colorless and you sacrifice it, you put a -1/-1 counter on a creature. Activate only as a sorcery. What do you think this is for, Julian?
I would guess Stratos Arcanist.
Yeah. So it took me a second to get this, and maybe I feel silly for it, but I was like, no, it doesn't kill Arcanist. What are you talking about? But Arcanist is very easy to forget that when it attacks, you can cast a spell equal to its power or less. So if it has a -1/-1 counter on it, it's now a 0/2, and you can't cast your cantrips or lightning bolts or anything. So, like, the creature in play is then just like fodder for Oko Plussing on it. That's it. Otherwise, it's just useless. So, this was really cool tech, which I think is like not cute at all. This is legit really good against Arcanist. So I wouldn't be surprised Lands picking this up more.
Dude, if this was like an obscure rare from Legends or something, this would already be like 500 euros or something.
Yeah, it's the Drop of Honey 2.0.
Yeah.
The other things that
but
stand
instead
out,
it's an obscure uncommon from, I guess, Amonkhet.
It is from Amonkhet, yeah. I love the name as well. So props to them for finding that. That's awesome. Like, Lands was already like historically very good against Delver, but the addition of Force of Negation and Arcanist, those two cards really, really hurt the matchup. So I don't think it was actually very good for a while, but then having this in your arsenal, I can see changes things. The other things that stand out, they both had 2 Elvish Reclaimers in the main deck. So technically turning on removal, as people say, but I think the card is so strong in the deck, it makes sense to me.
Yeah, it also makes sideboarding quite weird, right? So if you have some kind of removals, it's interesting. It also doesn't die to Lightning Bolt, and you might keep a couple of copies of Swords to Plowshares anyway because of the token.
Yeah, true.
So Lightning Bolt is really awkward against it. So yeah, I kind of like it.
Yeah. I guess actually decay people are leaving in anyway because it hits Exploration or Mox Diamond, potentially Sphere of Resistance and stuff, or Tracker. Yeah. So yeah, it makes sense actually. So really cool Lands decks. Next we have...
But wait, to interrupt you, sorry, one more time. They also have 2 copies of Experimental Frenzy in the sideboard, which is the standard, or I guess it might be banned standard by now.
No.
For those who don't know, it's a 4-mana... Yeah, it's a 4-mana enchantment that you put into play, and what it does is you can play the top of your library at any point, I think, but you can't play cards from your hand. That's how it works, right? So you basically you get to keep playing the cards on top of your library. You can also play lands, and if you really run into a situation where you can't do anything, then you can pay 4 mana to destroy it, so you can start playing cards from your hand again.
Yeah,
which is also kind of like, it's actually kind of cool in a deck that can get this out on turn 2.
It was played in lands previously when I guess it was 2018 when Grixis Control was a big player. I remember Jarvis U playing it as some SCG, I believe, and it did pick up a little bit of traction as like a 2 or 3 of them on the sideboard because Grixis Control just couldn't answer it, and you would overwhelm them with it. But I've not seen it since then, so that's pretty cool.
Didn't the card see some play in some experimental Doomsday builds? There's like a pile where you chain this into a bunch of LEDs, then Doomsday again until you find the tendrils, if I believe.
There was the pile was just like a second Doomsday and tendrils and LEDs and Ideas Unbound or something. I can't remember exactly, but you could just cast tendrils and Doomsday again, and then because you can cast the cards. So it was like 3 LED, another Doomsday and tendrils.
Yeah, indeed.
Which is pretty cool. yeah. So apart from that, I think it's kind of, I mean, I'm sorry for the joke, but experimented with very much in the format. But yeah, you're right. The Doomsday was cool, bit fringe, but lands is where it's kind of seen some play, so that's cool. So pretty like standard red-green lists to an extent, but then some new tech, some old tech, and some clever numbers. There's 2 Field of the Dead as well, which is now a bit of a mainstay. There's a Tabernacle Bog main deck, as you'd expect. Yeah, it's really well-rounded. There's a Blast Zone. There's 3 Gambles, usually 4. Ghost Quarter. Yeah, this just has like all the usual tools, I guess, now. Yeah, cool, they did well. Moving on, so we had Hogak. So we had 2 Hogaks in the top 8. Both of them seem fairly standard. It's surprising that, well, actually maybe it's not surprising. This deck is like kind of goes off people's radars, and then if they expect Delver to be well, it's always there. And I think this deck always overperforms than what people think.
I was going to say, this deck has low-key been one of the best decks in the format as of like the last 1 or 2 months.
It is consistently putting out
Nobody
great
like
results.
is taking that Graveyard Hate really serious, right?
It's also just good against Graveyard Hate that isn't Leyline of the Void and Rest in Peace. Like it just butchers through a lot of other things.
Yeah, the format has been somewhat lost in when it comes to what's the Graveyard Hate of choice as of late. Like Surgical Extraction used to be basically the most played sideboard card almost in Legacy.
Surgical's barely
but
played
now
it's
it's barely played, and I think like Uro is probably like part of that because it's, I mean, if you get to extract Uro against certain decks, it's good, but it feels so bad sometimes because you're still trading down a card and their Uro drew a card. It's like and it's not that great against Dreaded Arcanist, but at the same time against the Rock Diver decks, you don't want to bring in Leyline of the Void. By the way, maybe we talk about that in a little bit. Daniel Götzschel actually won the Legacy, what's it called? The Legacy Big Thing?
Is the Showcase Challenge. No, the Showcase Qualifier, sorry.
I said exactly, I actually didn't know, but it's the thing that's a really big deal.
Yeah.
And he played Rock Diver, and he had the innovation of 3 Relic of Progenitors in the sideboard, which is basically coming back now. Like, it used to be a thing 10 years ago. Yeah. And then I remember telling some of my friends, well, this isn't a Legacy card anymore when they put it in their deck. But like, check this out. This is actually really cool against the escape decks.
Just to put it in perspective, Daniel is also the man that played 3 or 4 Tormod's Crypts in the GP he won in his like blue-white Stoneblade deck with Snapcasters, and when Surgical used to be good. He has a way of doing things, and it works. He's a super smart guy, of course. And Relic is really, really, really good against Snow. It means you can't like dump your Uro. You need to earlier on. It's really good against Clothis if like in mirrors and stuff. It's a good card, and it's this value as well because the format you need to be trading tit for tat for value and card draw with the other fair decks.
I also really like it against Togak because eventually you either power through it, but if you do, then they're gonna blow it and you're gonna lose everything, and then you have to rebuild, or you're trying to like remove it, but then you're still gonna lose your entire graveyard and they're gonna draw a card. So no matter what happens, it's probably bad for you. So I'm actually excited for the card.
I think it's actually pretty bad against Hogak. It will help. It is Graveyard Hate, and it can nuke the whole graveyard. So especially when you're Delver with access to like Delver and Dreaded Arcanist to put fast pressure, it will win games. But if you don't have that pressure as well, then like leaving up 1 mana to activate it is is really bad in the matchup. You want to be pressuring them, and then just exiling 1 or 2 card a turn is not going to get there. So it's not ideal, but yeah, it'll still help.
Basically, my idea would be I blow their graveyard on turn 4 or something, and then I'm gonna counter all the Stitcher suppliers that they're gonna cast, and then they don't really get.
Yeah, that's assuming they've not done anything scary till turn 4. But yeah.
Yeah, that's the issue, right? That they might already have stuff in play,
Yeah.
and that's the big issue.
Yeah.
I always assume the creatures in play don't matter, but I guess whatever they actually do. With elves, it's always like, yeah, whatever do.
Yeah. Oh, well, 2/1s you do need to do something with. Although Arcanist is a 1/3 for some reason, so it lines up really well, like at clogging the board. It's just a good blocker. So yeah, Hogak, as we said, really just always performing. It's a super solid deck. Next one, we have a really cool deck which feels like very old school. It's kind of harking back to Banani's like GP winning lists, although of course it doesn't have Dig Through Time and Sense of Divining Top. But it's like Counterbalance Mentor with Dazes, 4 predicts, and it's using Mishra's Bauble, which I love this card, and I think this is a card that people should have experimented more with in shells with Counterbalance and Predict previously. Like, it started to be played when Lurrus was legal in Miracles, and it was fantastic there. But I'm honestly surprised that that shell has dropped off, even though Lurrus was such a huge part of the deck. Bauble is just really good in the deck, being able to cantrip with a Terminus and then like use it to draw a Terminus in the opponent's turn at will, or checking the top card for Predict, making Predict so you don't have to use your cantrips badly, or like checking Counterbalance if it'll counter a 1-drop or a 2-drop with a fetch in play or something. Sometimes you can like check the opponent's top of the card. Like, the information is really big for a control deck as well. For the cost of it is mulligans are harder because you can have this unknown cantrip in your hand, and the delayed draw can be bad, especially when you're looking to make land drops and stuff. But especially when you factor in here, this deck has 4 Mentor, so it really brings a lot to the deck. So I'm pretty keen on this deck. It's really, really sweet. So
I guess it's also one of the few things you can back with Savine's Reclamation. Well, I guess, okay,
yeah.
You get one of the Planeswalkers, I guess.
Yeah. So the deck has a Savine's Reclamation, so it's bringing back like one of the 2 Teferi Time Ravelers, or it has 4 Monastery Mentor and 3 Counterbalance, so not messing around at all. And there's a Jace the Mind Sculptor hanging out, as there should always be one Jace in these kind of decks, because he's very good against snow and stuff.
Interesting that there's no Snapcaster Mage. That card really has fallen off a cliff in Legacy.
Yeah.
Like, what if I told you like 1 year ago that Snapcaster Mage is barely seeing any play in Legacy?
I wouldn't believe you.
It went from maybe the most played creature to probably not even being in the top 10 anymore.
Or I would think that there's something weird happening where like main deck Rest in Peace is really good or something. I don't know.
Maybe that's actually, that's something that I would love to see, main deck Rest in Peace. I mean, there's not really any good deck right now, but it's good against all the Ruck Delvers, all against anything that tries to abuse Uro.
It is very, very good against the fair decks. The thing is, you pair it with Helm of Obedience and Energy Field, and those cards are so bad when you don't have Rest in Peace. They're really, really just so bad. And so I think I've ranted about Rip Hell on this podcast a couple of times already, so I won't go too much into it. But yeah, maybe Rest in Peace could be just played as a 2 of when you have ways to discard it for value or something. I don't know. Cool. So, quick summary. Mental deck, super cool. Maybe we'll see it be played online. In 4th place, we have the lands, which is the same as the 1st place deck, which we covered. 5th place, we have the Slow Depth deck. So, I've not been...
That should be Turbo Depth.
Oh, Turbo Depths, my bad. Yes, it says it right there. Turbo Depths. So this is what I've been seeing mostly online. I think it's the more popular version, and I think the consensus seems to be it's kind of the better version. It's playing Not of This Worlds and stuff. And I think people are identifying that you can't really outgrind the Oko, Uro, Source of Plowshares, Coatl deck. Like, they will eventually like go above 20 life so they can Oko it, and it's hard. So they think they just try and go under these decks, and being faster against Delver is often quite good as well. a balancing act.
So the Knot of the World basically counters any activated ability or a spell that targets basically your 2020.
Yeah.
And previously people used to do that so they could counter one Caracas activation, then kill. But now I think it's actually there so you wouldn't run into Oko, so your 2020 doesn't get agged.
Yep.
Which is kind of cute.
Oko,
like they also have 2
Borrow
right
as
of
well.
consumption in the sideboard. Oh, Brazen Borrow too, yeah. So yeah, they have 2 right of consumption as well in the sideboard, which basically lets them sacrifice the token and deal 20 damage, or is it life lost? I guess it doesn't really matter. What is it?
I think that does get Veil of Summoned, so it kind of fell off because of that, because people were bringing Veil against you.
To target player, yeah.
But
you get life equal to the damage dealt this turn. Okay, so that's basically a way to give your creature haste for 2 extra mana.
Yeah, so it's generally, it's been for like Source of Plowshares decks or for getting around Caracas and stuff like that. But yeah, pretty cool. Next one, we have an absolute, I mean, is it an event in Italy if there's no miracles or like control deck in the top 8? So we have.
I was going to say, like, Miracles is just the Italian deck, right?
Yeah, you're right. Lands and Miracles. So Alessandro Tassini, I recognize the name as well. Probably placed in some events. So it has Frantic Inventory. So Frantic Inventory is the new accumulated knowledge, which is essentially the same card, except for it only counts the copies in your graveyard. So it's probably better, but it has a new frame. How do you feel on that?
Yeah, the new frame is the issue, right?
Yeah.
I want my old frame, my Cardia Mask block.
Yeah.
Which is, it's Nemesis, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
It must be from Nemesis. There's no good cards from Prophecy. I think there's like 1 card in Legacy that's from Prophecy that's playable, and I don't even remember it.
I'm struggling to think.
Tom, do you remember? Is there any playable Prophecy card for Legacy?
Not off the top of my head, no. That set is terrible. I started playing Magic briefly before then. Remember being...
the only thing I can think of is Ristic Study for EDH.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I can't think of any good card from that set.
There's got to be something.
Okay, so if anybody is listening right now, I hope some people are, let us know in the comments on Reddit, on Twitter, on, not YouTube, send us a letter. What is the most playable card in Prophecy? Like, I really want to know.
I can't wait for like a completely insane format staple to be reminded.
Guys, Swords to Plowshares has been reprinted in Prophecy. It's like the one everybody uses. Like, oh my god. I wouldn't be surprised if it actually was Island. But I think that, no, wait. Those sets don't even have basic lands. Only the big set, Mercadian Maskless Islands. Anyway.
Didn't Oko previously come out in Prophecy? Yeah. Yeah. So.
Nobody, like, we missed it for like 20 years.
Well, no one knew what food was. Now we do.
Okay.
All right.
So yeah, there's a 4-color Miracles deck here. Basically all the colors except for black, which is basically the way to go for these 4-color Miracles decks these days. Why are people like Callum? You're deeper into the Miracles development history than I am. Why do we see Frantic Inventory here?
Well, it is just accumulated knowledge. So, the card is good because the deck is just looking to go late, and if you can cast the 3rd copy, that includes Snapcastering back one as well later. Like, you are drawing 3 or 4 cards, which is insane in this format, and then you can just force anything you want and counter anything you want. So the card has a really high ceiling, but a pretty low floor. Like, paying 1 and a blue to cycle a card is quite a cost earlier on, and then still paying 1 and a blue to draw 2 cards is not fantastic. So the card is very good when you're playing in a format that's slow and you expect to go very late. So I can actually see this if you're expecting to play against stuff like Snow or like the deck we saw before. Then the Mentor midrange deck, if you have enough removal for them, and Terminus for Mentor, I can see this being like a big trump to the control matchups.
I see. We talked about the card in one of our chats, I think actually a couple of weeks ago, where you and some other Miracles guys explained to me why Accumulated Knowledge is not seeing play anymore. And I think I remember it to be that you guys said that you have to be quicker to react to something like Dreadhorde Arcanist. Like, you can't be sitting there cycling your accumulated knowledges, because then Dreadhorde Arcanist is just going to take you out while you're searching for your Swords to Plowshares. Yeah. So, like you mentioned, it's great if you go late, but if you have to answer something rather quickly, then
it's expensive to cycle early. My other problem with it, which I don't know how shared this is, but I think the card is really bad against Veil of Summer, which, although the 2 cards don't line up at all, Veil cycles if you cast it, not that. But Veil punishes a deck trying to go very late and like control the stack. So because it's such a strong card against counter magic, especially in multiples and from the snow decks. So I think a deck trying to go super late and cast its third or fourth AKs and stuff is just going to be inherently wanting to play more counter magic and more control tools to be able to go over the top of other fair decks in the late game. And building your deck in a way to take advantage of the card advantage from AK or Frantic Inventory is going to make your deck worse versus Veil of Summer. So there's a bit of friction there. It doesn't make the card like not be played or whatever. And like I said, it's an effect. You want the cards against snow, but it's bad if they're on lots of Veil of Summers, I think. So there's some tension there. I'm not sure where it falls now.
Interesting interaction.
Yeah.
Or rather strategic interaction. It's not actually interaction between the two cards. So you mentioned that if you want to go really late, you want to have some cards that influence the board, which is something I really, really agree with. So that actually immediately makes me wonder whether you want something like Council's Judgment. Of course, I guess Teferi Time Reveler feels just like such a better card, but at the same time it's blue, so it runs into Veil of Summer again.
But I think
I guess it doesn't. Yeah.
but I think decks running Frantic Inventory or AK want a lot more stack interaction as well, is the thing.
Basically anything that either counters or removes, right? So not like cute stuff. Yeah.
So it's in a tough spot. I'm not surprised to see it. I think it can be good. It's fallen out of favor. But Arcanist is probably the biggest stroke against it. It's not the Veil thing. It's just a big cost to be using a mana like that in the early game. But
it has 2 humilities in the sideboard as well, which is like super
the sideboard
scary
is
from an elf's
something,
perspective.
yeah. So the sideboard is 2 Grafdigger's Cage, 2 Blood Moon, 2 Humility, and then like Flusterstorm, Veil of Summer, Return to Nature, Surgical Extraction, and Pyroblast, which are more common. But like 6 heavy hitting permanents is not standard. That is also so much graveyard hate. Like 2 Surgical, 2 Return to Nature, kind of 2 Grafdigger's Cage. But I guess there is no Snapcaster Mage in the deck. There's 2 Snapcaster Mage.
There's 2, yeah.
Yeah. So Cage is not a common inclusion, but I guess this player really hates elves with Humility and Cage.
The way I understand it is that as long as you have Cage around, you don't need your Snapcaster Mages, and once they get rid of Cage... I guess you would love to use your Snapcaster Mages to protect the Cage, though, right? So to flashback...
It can be awkward.
I don't know, Flusterstorm or something.
Because, like, if you bring in Cage against something like Hogak, it's good, but they can play their creatures and start attacking you, and that's where you really want, like, the snap swords and stuff.
Yeah, but they can still bring stuff back with Mystic Sanctuary, right? Yes,
Mystic Sanctuary works through Cage, but it's really important when you're playing against Hogak. Like, if you get some graveyard hate, like it's generally a Surgical Extraction or Tormod's Crypt or something, and then you want the snap swords, and then Snapcaster trading with something as well to deal with the random 2/1 idiots and stuff. But
don't call them idiots. Those are zombies.
Hey, I love them as well. They like being called idiots, I promise. they told me in confidence. But yeah, so Cage is interesting. Blood Moons and Humilities. I mean, maybe it's just the way to go, like really hard-hitting things. We had a discussion earlier today about what you can afford to play in the Legacy sideboards currently, and the format seems so much more powerful than a few years ago. You don't want to play flexible cards. You want to play harder hitting sideboard cards that are narrower, but they're going to win the matchups you want to win. So could be going after that, or just really likes the art on Humility. Who knows?
Do you think we'll ever see a Humility reprint? I could see it like being really cool if they did something, but I guess the rules are so complicated.
It's not reserve list.
Maybe they're going to do it as some kind of promotional thingy. It's probably on the reserve list actually, which is an entire different topic.
I think so.
That's actually maybe we'll talk about that in the future.
Oh god. Okay, moving on from the reserve list, we have Francesco Fabris on Slow Depths. Looks pretty standard to me. There's Steely Resolve in the sideboard, which is one of my favorite like little tech cards. That's 1 green enchantment. As it comes to play, you choose a creature type, and then those creature types have Shroud. Cool. Do you see anything else standing out to you?
No, this looks pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
This is as slow depthy as it gets.
Yep.
I'm a big fan of the turbo depth ones, but this one is also like we call this slow depth, right? But this can sometimes still often make the token on the second turn or something.
Yeah, because there's 3 Mox Diamond, no Lotus Petal. Has the full set of Elvish Reclaimer, which is cool as well.
Okay, this one's probably going to make it on the third turn.
Yeah.
But actually, no, they also have Urborg, a Dark Depth, and Thespian Stage, and Hexmage, so they can even do it on the second turn.
Yeah.
So this... and in 8th place, we got another copy of Bloodghast. They call it Cerbo, the Rating Sculptor. Huh. Okay.
Yep.
I have no idea who Cerbo is.
Oh, it's the Rating Sculptor, obviously.
Okay, I just Google image search Cerbo, and apparently Cerbo is an executive secretary at the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty Organization. Maybe that's where
that makes complete sense.
Oh, yeah,
right.
Good old Cerbo.
You cracked it. Good job, Julian.
Code cracker. I should be working for the CIA or something. Now this looks pretty straightforward as it comes, right?
This is
pretty
even the sideboard. I recognize the numbers. I think it's like Lotus Box. Lots of the players played something basically this, and it's become what people often copy. Looks pretty standard. In 9th place, just missing on the top 8, we have good old-fashioned Dredge, keeping everyone honest. I don't know about you, but I absolutely adore Dredge. It's such a...
Oh man, I don't know. I've never had respect for Dredge, not in the sense that I thought the deck was super bad or something, but I always felt like, for the longest of times, I felt like the deck was just not good enough. It was like okay to overrun people who really didn't have any kind of hate. But I gotta say, ever since the London Mulligan, I'm pretty sure that Dredge is one of those decks that benefited the most from the London Mulligan, because they really don't need that many different cards in their opening hands. They really just need a couple of things, and then post-board they need like a removal spell for whatever kind of permanent hate you bring, and then they can go off. I've ever since the London Mulligan, this is the deck that my respect has grown for the most. So at this point, I'm actually somewhat scared of facing the deck because it seems quite resilient.
Yeah, totally. So we'll plow through the rest of the top 16 quickly, but we cannot spend too much time on every single thing. 10th place, we have Blue-Black Shadow. This is another deck which I think is better than people give it respect for. And I know Manguchi played it in the event as well. Didn't do too well, but it's strong.
But he bought a beta Time Twister, so that's that.
So who's the real winner? Yeah. So it looks pretty standard to me as well. Straight blue-black. Full Wardy Grave stands out, but it's not very interesting.
They got the main deck Reanimate, which I guess you can do in the deck.
Yeah.
I've seen it a couple times.
Yeah. Small thing to the side, but when I used to play lots of Shardless years and years ago now, I guess, there was this joke from Shadow players that they would say turn 1, cycle Straight Wraith, and then reanimate it was game over against Shardless, because they could never abrupt decay it. Like, it was Swamp Walk, so the Ghosts or Death Rites could never block it. It was like basically turn 1 GG.
Yeah. I guess your best bet was something like Chase Bounce it.
Yeah,
Liliana
-2 or Chase Bounce it.
How bad the card is supposed to be as a creature.
Yeah. And then you just cycle it. It's like, sweet.
Oh, value. You just paid 4 mana, so I can draw an extra card. Perfect. 11th place, we got good old Dragon Stompy from, I guess they're part of the Buddha team of Italy. I see that those guys quite a lot with their t-shirts. I think the interesting thing is that they're running 7 Chandras, which is not that common.
No.
That the Awakened Inferno one is the uncounterable one for 7 mana, right? Or 6 mana?
Yeah, 6
Something
mana.
like that. Expansive.
This is quite different, actually. There's no Megs of the Moon. They have 2 Grim Monoliths, which is not super common, but that helps with Chandra. And they have 4 Khans, which kind of fell off for a bit, so... And Blood Sun. So it's quite different, actually. No Magus is big. I guess there's so many lightning bolts.
I was actually urged by a friend of mine, Marius Hausmann, to try the version that plays Blood Sun over Blood Moon. And I thought Blood Sun would be pretty bad, but at least for me, when I played the deck, Blood Sun was actually a lot better than Blood Moon, because shutting off the fetch lands was actually quite a big deal.
Yeah.
Like a really big deal.
My only experience playing against it is... I haven't played against it online very much, but in paper, I had a few players at my store who played it quite a lot. And every single time they played it, I would, if I didn't have a Force of Will, I'd be like, oh, thank God, it's just that. Or if they played it, I'd have a Force of Will and let it resolve, because I'm like, oh, that's fine. And then 3 or 4 turns later, I'm really regretting it, let it get into play. Because you think, okay, I can cast my spells, but then what it does later on is pretty impactful. Like, it makes your cantrips worse. It does shut off 2 or 3 lands each time. It's significant. Because the drawing a card is really good as well.
Yeah, they are, definitely. That's something what's annoying about Blood Moon. Like, the first round you surf and you get the second one, and you're now like, yeah, okay, that's not really gonna help me. Unless, of course, it takes the game, but then the second one doesn't really matter. So yeah, we got that. In 12th place, we got another pretty vanilla sneak show list. Doesn't irgendwie somewhat toy around with omniscience or something. It's like straight up sneak show. 13th place, we got we got the boogeyman of the format. We got actually Rock Diver in here. We're just playing 2 spare pierces. We don't really see 2 spare pierces in this kind of deck a lot, do we?
No, they've just gone like heavier on preordains, and so that they can like make Arcanists better. So they're playing 3 Arcanists here. See, otherwise looks pretty standard.
I'm pretty surprised to see Force of Will is normal and 2 Force of Negation as well. I would have thought if somebody told me they play 2 spare pierces that those would take the place of 2 Force of Negations, but they got those as well. I guess the main reason to run spare pierce in the past used to be something like Chalice, but we don't really see Chalice all that much anymore. But to counter Oko, I would guess.
I guess that's so, yeah.
Or maybe to protect your Dreaded Arcanist for a turn, and then it replaces itself already. Something like that. In 14th place, we have 5-color Snow Control, which, that's...
I know you love the 5 colors back to basics in the sideboard.
I love it when all the colors bled together, and there's like nothing unique about the individual colors anymore.
5-color back to basics.
Everybody can play any spell from any basic forests. Yeah, that's my kind of magic.
Tell us how you really feel. Come on.
Yeah, I love it. I built it in foil and paper in all kinds of languages, and I'm playing it against the ball, like, because just even goldfishing this deck, you get the turn 1 Astrolabe, you already feel so good. You actually, I don't know, I can't speak about that. That's getting a bit kinky. But yeah, that's what I want to do. And then, oh my god, on the second turn when I play against the wall, I pass the turn, then I pretend that I don't have the correct mana because I have 2 forests, but then I flash in Icefang Code and I pretend that I blocked a really important creature of theirs, and then
oh my god,
I practice my diabolic laugh.
Yep. You're a natural. You're a brilliant Snow player.
I already figured the deck out. It's pretty easy.
Yeah.
They have... Oh, God. Come on. I look at the sideboard now. Fuck this shit. Come on. They have 2 Containment Priests. They have 3 Plague Engineers. They have 2 Back to Basics. Like, what the fuck is going on in this deck? Like, the only honest card in their entire sideboard is 1 Mindbreak Trap.
Well, Cling to
and
Dust.
That's pretty much it.
Honest?
Yeah. It does what it's supposed to do. It's like...
Okay.
This is just stupid. Let's move on. 15th place.
I would say Cling to Dust is a pretty fair magic card.
We need to do an episode on Snow soon about the ins and outs and the what's the best like land hate to play in Snow. Cool. Coming to an episode near you soon.
Yeah, at some point we're just gonna play Contamination, and if you know what Contamination does.
I actually guested on Eli Goblin Lucky One's stream recently playing Bog Boys when we had Contaminations in the deck.
Okay, that's pretty good. Yep. So for those who don't know, it's an enchantment, and you have to sacrifice a creature on your upkeep, and it makes all your lands tap for black. Does it also make the Astrolabe tap for black? Because I bet it doesn't.
Well, no. The land will tap for black, but then it's not Snow mana, so you can't filter it. No, it's all lands.
I think it's only non-basic lands, right?
Yeah, all lands would tap for black, and then like if you tap a Snow land, I think it adds 1 Snow black.
Yeah, it should, because it's a Snow permanent.
Yeah. So then Astrolabe beats Contamination.
I think it would.
Yeah, that's so stupid. That's just like so fucked up. Come on, guys. How deep do we have to go with this stupid card? Oh, man.
Moving onwards.
I wish Astrolabe was at least like a Snow mana to activate, but you can... Anyway, let's move on. I probably missed that. Oh, yeah, there's another Dragon Stompy. Cool. Oh, great deck. Awesome deck.
Maybe this one has back to basics in the sideboard.
Wait. The Dragon Stompy is back to basics in the sideboard?
No, I'm just annoying you. Maybe we can play 5-color Dragon Stompy.
Awesome. And in 16th place, we actually have Infect. Thomas, is that the guy you lost to?
This is the girl I lost to, indeed. Barbara Molinari.
Oh, I'm sorry, Barbara Molinari. Yeah.
In fact, she. So when I traveled to Italy, I had a friend with me, and day 1 he told me the bad beat story about how she destroyed him with Boggles in Modern. And so day 2, it was my turn to get beaten. We named her Barbara Slayer of the Belgians from now on. She was lovely though, but she did crush us both.
Nice.
And I think she made top 16 in Legacy in Modern as well. So she had a double top 16. Quite a good weekend for her.
Nice. I'm also going to massively shout out the mana base. 2 Tropical Island, 2 Breeding Pool. I love seeing people play Shocks and not be scared of playing. Like, you'd be amazed by how you can get through and get good results like this. So that's cool.
Yeah, I think it makes the most sense in aggressive decks where you probably like the game ends.
Yeah.
Where in situations where you're the aggressive deck and the opponent's they're supposed to be the control deck. And in those decks, it probably actually doesn't make that big of a difference. Yeah,
you will always lose points against Delver by playing shocks, but 2 and 2 especially, you can like end of turn them if you feel like you're under pressure from a life total, and having 2 drops to fetch up first if you need to. Yeah, it's cool to see.
I will say she probably doesn't listen to the podcast because she doesn't have great stable stack in the sideboard, so she clearly doesn't listen to some Fenris Clouds' advice.
That is very true. I was about to say like, what, everyone listens to the podcast, surely, but no, you're right. It's a very good point. We've missed it.
Yeah. If you're playing Infect and you didn't listen to our last episode, what are you doing with your life?
And why is there no
beating me for a change?
Sideboard?
We've all been there. So yeah, that's the event. Tom, do you know if they're gonna have more events in Italy? Because I know that Nebraska's War, that's basically one of the biggest events in Europe every year. I think they mentioned they're not gonna have it this year, but do you have some inside info on that?
Yeah. So first of all, 4Seasons themselves, they are scheduled to do one in the winter, if the situation permits it. So for now, the signal is that yes, the event will happen, but we need to follow them to be sure that nothing changes and the authorities will let them go through with it. For Nebraska's War, things are more difficult. I've heard there's nothing 100% certain yet, but they are having a really hard time getting the go from the local authorities. And as the event is coming nearer by, it's going to be hard for them to still have it set up, at least to the standards they've grown accustomed to. So Nebraska's War, likely not. 4Seasons winter might happen. Things look good for now.
Okay. We'll have to keep an eye out. I'd be tempted to come to the Winters one, especially after hearing the precautions they take as well. I've been really missing Paper Legacy. I didn't realize how much, because I do play quite a lot online, or I did a lot more as well recently. And it gets to the point where, I know you're not a fan already, but I really enjoy playing online as well. But it's sometimes getting to a point now where I'm like, I need that injection of being able to play casual decks with friends at the pub and stuff as well. So
I would hardly recommend
it to come if it's
it felt really good to be out there, not only to play cards, but just to see a bunch of my friends from across Europe. One of the reasons I went to Italy was just to see my good friend Raffaele, who's the guy who houses in Florence. He's a vintage player as well.
Lovely.
And just getting to see him back, having some solid Italian food, having drinks, that's at least half of the experience.
Was there a lot of international participation, or was the tournament predominantly Italian?
Oh, it was predominantly Italian. I did play against 2 Swiss players, 2 friends, one of them in Legacy, one of them in Vintage. And the guy who won the Vintage was a French player. He's actually one of the dealers from Carta Papa, Romain, quite well-known guy. Mm-hmm. But other than that, I didn't see too many people from outside of Italy. At least no familiar faces.
Okay. I guess that's gonna be something that's gonna come up again, and hopefully the near or not too distant future when things get better. Hopefully.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
So let's see about that.
I'm hoping I can do more of these as well.
Tom. Oh yeah, definitely. I have no idea. Like, when I'm gonna go to my next event, I get a really good vlogging setup with my new camera and like a special outdoor microphones and everything. I'm really looking forward to doing a lot of video content. Like, I don't even care about like how my tournament's gonna go, but I want to do some awesome video content about the first big event I'm gonna visit again after like everything. Well, we have no idea when it's gonna be over, unless you want to trust the Russians and their vaccine. I don't know about that, but we will see. So, Tom, thank you so much for coming on the podcast tonight, sharing your experience and everything, getting me excited for Vintage again. Where can people find you if they want to get hold of you?
So I am BLC_Tom on Twitter, although I don't really use it much. And other than that, you can try and find me on Facebook. It's Tom the Decker. I'm sure Julian will have my name right in the show notes.
Awesome. So, Callum, where can people find you?
You can find me at WhiteFacesMTG on Twitter. That's the best place.
Are you streaming, or is it not?
I want to.
Busy playing Arena, you said, right?
Well, I'm not going to stream Arena. I've got lots of Legacy decks. Like, I want to play still. One of my favorite decks I've played ever in Legacy is like this wilderness reclamation deck with Cunning Wish and Search for Azcanta called the Epic Pit, in homage to the Epic
Was
Storm.
that ever a real deck?
Define real.
An epic deck.
Well, look, I did 4-1 a league with it. Marcus has played it a bunch. I went like 4-2 at a local event.
That sounds like something that Marcus would play. Wilderness Reclamation, Cunning Wish.
Yeah. But the thing is,
dude, I almost have Marcus this far that he will pick up elves in the near future. So Marcus, you promised to. You want to play the deck that draws the most cards in the entire format.
We convinced him that Glimpse of Nature might be the best card draw spell in Legacy, but he
doesn't even take convincing.
But he said back, "But is it good if you only draw bad cards?"
Oh, you must have missed the part where he actually said he was going to play elves.
Okay.
I'm looking forward to that. He's going to be
but
converted
he's going to cast Glimpse and then like
life.
draw 5 cards and then just laugh because he's drawing 1/1s rather than Force of Wills.
Oh man.
So
we will see about that.
Okay, I'm going to try and stream soon. I want to stream the Epic Pit, which the name comes from absolute adoration for the Epic Storm and its name, and in this one, they Burning Wish for their win condition. This one uses Cunning Wish to get Empty the Pits, which is 4 black and then XX with Delve. You make loads of zombies. So yeah, that's the Epic Pit.
Are we still talking about Legacy, man? This is just. I mean, you do a lot of brewing, and like when you did the Sharkstale thing, that actually hit Legacy really hard.
This deck is powerful.
Empty the Pits.
I've not played it since Coatl, Uro, Oko. Actually, Oko was out for a bit, and I don't think Oko is good in the deck actually. But I've not played it since Uro came out, and the deck is a deck that wants to ramp. So we played it with Veteran Explorer and Cabal Therapy before, but now with Uro and Coatl, I think you can just play a better early game. So I don't know. The deck is bug and just plays loads of good cards. It has Force of Will, Uro, Fatal Push, Abrupt Decay, Ponder, Brainstorm, and then we try and make it worse. I mean, how bad can it really be?
I gotta give it to you, a 4-mana enchantment, that's something Legacy has a big issue dealing with. Nobody can deal with a green 4-mana enchantment.
Yeah, there's only 2 as well. So the deck is cool because it's a combo control deck. It looks like a control deck. And when we first built it, we put it on the source, and someone said, "How does this win?" I think Marcus just like smiled side to side when they said that. And so the win condition used to be Veteran Explorers. Because...
Oh, come on.
Well,
Tom, can you take over? I'm done.
There was 2 Snapcasters and a Jace as well. Okay, fine.
I'm baffled, but I do know Marcus, and it doesn't surprise me one bit, if I'm being honest. That sounds right.
The real win con was because you have Search for Azcanta, and then when you flip it, you get to untap it with Wilderness Reclamation, and so you like then get more Wilderness Reclamations, and then you're making like 40 mana because you have all the lands. And we also used to play an Urborg, so that all the fetches were lands in the late game, so you can have even more mana. And then you can like Blue Sun Zenith to draw like 30 cards, and then yeah, I'm getting really excited.
Oh, and you're actually gonna kill your opponent with Blue Sun Zenith.
I did sometimes.
That's actually something I could.
The deck also, the deck had so many great moments. I played it online quite a bit because it was so fun. And my favorite screenshot I got from it
that you can recall every single one of them
was the best bit ever was the sideboard also has a Sabo's Decree. Do you know what that does?
Yes, I do. It's 5 or 6 mana. It's an instant because you can Cunning Wish for it. You name a creature type, you destroy all of that type, and your opponent also discards all of that type.
Yes, quite good versus elves. But my favorite moment was I got to cast it versus Blue-Red Delver, naming Salamander. Terramander is a
Terramander?
Oh, God. Terramander, Salamander. They had 2 in play and then another one in hand. It was pretty sweet.
Okay,
right.
Okay. So we're definitely gonna link this in the show notes because I actually want to see what this looks like.
Okay, I have to stream it now. I'm getting so excited just talking about it. All right.
That's my favorite pitch, the Epic Pit.
The Epic Pit.
Dude, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Awesome. In speaking of amazing stuff, if you guys wanna find us on YouTube, or I wish that's gonna be for the future.
The Epic Everyday Eternal coming to you soon.
The Epic Everyday Eternal. No, you can find us at EternalMTG on Twitter. And yeah, we tweet out who's going to be our guest, unless we forget about it. But it's definitely going to be in the Discord every time. So that's something that you can access to by supporting us on Patreon. Just like our Eternal Witness tier supporters, Valerio, Tommy Hinks, Trent Browers, or, oh my god, we have so many Grizzlebrand tier supporters. Dude, we have Victor Benanst, Bachu Bat, Scott Monroe, Kudush Ali State, Jeremy Gates, Martin Nielsen, Eugene Freeman, Henry Korkuch, and our good friend Wow, that's some serious legacy support there.
Mm-hmm.
So people say Wizards doesn't support the legacy format. People do support the legacy format for sure. So thank you so much. If you want to get access to us, you can do that on Twitter. I'm at it's Julian23. Callum, you already mentioned yours. You're at WhiteFacesMTG, right?
Yep.
Awesome. And if you support us on Patreon, you can also get access to the ever-growing Patreon Discord. So check that out. Other options, leave a review. We actually recently got a really, really awesome review on iTunes. I actually shared that in our Facebook group because I'm always so excited when you get a new review on iTunes.
He loves it.
Thank you so much for that. And yeah, I think with that, we're going to call it a day. Our next episode is very likely going to be a comprehensive review of all the spoilers that we've seen for Zendikar Rising, and I guess the other 2 or 3 sets that Wizards will announce until then, because nobody knows how many sets are actually coming out in the near future. I lost track, but there's going to be a couple of interesting cards, a couple of maybes, and the thing I'm actually most excited for is the new mechanic, the double-faced cards that flip into lands.
Yeah, I've got a lot of thoughts about this, so I'm looking forward to talking about them.
Awesome. So tune in something like 2 weeks, and yeah, have a great morning, evening, afternoon, night. See you again next time. Bye-bye.
Ciao.
Bye.